The peaceful afternoon began to unravel when a sudden, urgent cry reached Ethan's ears, disrupting the calm that enveloped his suburban property. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the landscape, and he had just stepped outside to breathe in the serenity of nature, the gentle rustle of leaves and the soft melodies of birds nearby. However, as the sound intensified, a sense of unease and concern took root in his stomach. Ethan quickly realized this wasn't just a bird in distress, it was the desperate cry of a kitten. With growing urgency, he moved toward the source of the noise, each step quickening his heartbeat as the cries became more pronounced. At the edge of his porch appeared a mother cat, her fur a tangled mess, and her eyes wide with fear. In her mouth she carried a small, delicate being, a tiny kitten that seemed barely alive. With trembling legs, she approached Ethan and gently placed the kitten at his feet, as if she understood he was her last hope. In that moment, Ethan felt as though time stood still. Crouched down, he took in the sight of the frail creature, its chest rising and falling with difficulty. The reality of the situation hit him hard, and he instinctively cradled the kitten in his hands. He knew that this encounter was about to lead him on an unexpected journey. The little kitten felt alarmingly fragile. Each rib was visible through its thin body, and he realized it had been fighting for life far longer than it should have. As he glanced back at the mother cat, Tess, her unwavering gaze on him filled him with a heavy mix of responsibility and helplessness. There was a profound connection in her eyes that conveyed her hopes and fears, more effective than words ever could. Just then, Mira, a longtime friend and fellow animal rescue enthusiast, arrived. She stopped in her tracks when she noticed the mother cat and her kitten, taking a moment to process the scene before her. Their shared history of rescue stories suddenly felt relevant, as this was a call for help that neither of them could ignore. It was hard to find the right words as the reality of the situation settled in. "I think it's dying," I finally admitted, my heart heavy with the weight of that thought. The kitten lay so still, its breaths barely perceptible, and it was clear that time was slipping away. In a swift response, Mira took charge. She gently wrapped the fragile creature in a warm blanket, her hands steady as she began to assess the situation. Nearby, Tess, the kitten's mother, hovered close, her eyes filled with a painful mix of hope and despair. It was as if she was silently pleading for reassurance that everything would be okay. Watching Tess was heartbreaking. Her anxious gaze mirrored my own fears for her little one. I felt a deep responsibility to help, not just for the kitten's sake, but for Tess, who had instinctively sought me out. Her trust weighed heavily on my conscience. As we worked, Sophie joined us, typically a beacon of positivity. Her optimism, however, faltered as she examined the tiny creature. "We can save it, right? We've handled worse," she said, her tone laced with determination. I wanted to echo her belief, but a nagging feeling suggested that this was different. This moment felt far more significant. The hours blended into one. Mira created a cozy, nurturing environment for the kitten, keeping a watchful eye for enemies of life. Sophie remained by my side, her encouraging words unable to mask the seriousness of the situation. Meanwhile, Tess moved about, her anxiety palpable. She seemed drawn to us, monitoring every move, only to retreat as if overwhelmed by fear. "Ethan, keep an eye on her," Mira urged, her voice soothing yet firm. "She's watching you. You're her connection to keeping her baby safe." I nodded, grappling with the reality of that statement. I wasn't a miracle worker, I was just a guide trying to navigate this difficult moment. Yet Tess stayed close, her protective instincts evident, deepening my guilt each time I looked her way. Sophie knelt beside me, furrowing her brow in concern. "What if we need more help?" she whispered, hesitantly suggesting the shelter. "I don't think we have time for that," I replied, my voice tight with urgency. "We'll do what we can here." The next morning began with a soft mewing outside my window. I assumed it was just a stray cat, but I was mistaken. When I opened the door, I was met with a sight that took my breath away. Tess stood there, visibly agitated, cradling another kitten. This new arrival seemed even frailer than the first. I rushed outside, heart racing as I processed what was happening. Tess had left her earlier kitten behind and now returned with another tiny life that looked just as unwell. She gently placed the new kitten at my feet, and my heart sank as I noticed its shallow breathing and matted fur. In that moment, uncertainty gripped me. What could we do for this fragile creature? Mira and Sophie joined me, and we stood in stunned silence, grappling with the implications of Tess's actions. Why had she chosen us again? What signs were we missing? Mira quickly examined the new kitten, her face turning serious. "It's not looking good," she murmured, concern evident in her tone. The helplessness washed over me. We might be too late to help. Tess nudged affectionately against my legs, her eyes pleading for reassurance. I felt a heavy emotional weight in my chest. This was more than just a rescue. It felt like a pivotal moment, an opportunity to define who we were in times of uncertainty. As I considered our next steps, I was struck by deeper questions. Should we take the kittens to the shelter? Could we truly provide the care they needed? Or might it be kinder to let them return to the wild, where they could have a better chance at survival? Mira's words echoed in my mind. Not every rescue turns out the way we hope. The fate of the kittens and Tess hung in the balance, forcing us to confront our abilities as a team to make the right choice. What did Tess understand that we didn't? This wasn't just a random encounter. We seemed to be woven into a narrative that stretched beyond ourselves. The situation took an unexpected turn when we realized there were now two fragile kittens to consider. This revelation heightened the weight of our dilemma. Mira had just picked up the first kitten and brought us inside, where a heavy uncertainty filled the room. The question loomed, should we try to save both, or would that only mean extending their suffering? Tess, who had been pacing anxiously, mirrored our unease as she moved in tight circles, caught in her own silent turmoil. As we assessed the situation, Mira voiced our concerns. "Ethan, we can't take in every injured animal that comes our way," she said calmly, but I could hear the worry in her tone. "The shelter is already overwhelmed." Her words struck me. I knew the responsibility we had taken on. Looking at the two sickly kittens, the gravity of the moment felt almost unbearable. Tess seemed to be waiting for direction, her body tense and her eyes pleading. Meanwhile, Sophie was brainstorming ideas, her optimism shining through as she said, "We can make this work. We've rescued so many before." Her enthusiasm was admirable, yet I couldn't shake the troubling reality that these kittens were incredibly fragile. Their chances of survival appeared slim, and I found myself questioning whether we could truly help them. I turned to Mira, feeling a flicker of determination. "We have the resources, right? We've done it before." Mira let out a sigh and shook her head. "Ethan, you're not seeing the whole picture. These cats, they're different from the others we've saved. They seem too far gone. We might just be making their suffering last longer." Her words resonated with me, amplifying my internal struggle. I didn't want to abandon these creatures after all they'd been through, but Mira's insight lingered in my thoughts. Perhaps our intentions weren't the best path forward. As we debated our options, Tess suddenly settled down beside us, her head drooping. It seemed she sensed our uncertainty and was losing hope in our ability to help her and her kittens. As the days progressed, a sense of urgency intensified around us. The situation had grown more complex than we had anticipated, shifting our focus from simply saving the kittens to grappling with deeper implications. I often found myself contemplating whether we could truly make a difference. One of those moments came to a head when an unexpected storm swept in one morning. Dark clouds loomed overhead, casting a shadow over our thoughts. The rain hammered against the windows, turning the world outside into a blurred mess. While our home was warm, it wasn't prepared for the extensive care the kittens needed. I saw Sophie kneeling beside me, her gentle voice cutting through my spiraling doubts. "We can't give up on them, Ethan. They need us. I believe we can make a difference." Yet, as the storm raged outside, it felt like our options were closing in. Flooded roads rendered our planned shelter unreachable. Meanwhile, Tess, the mother cat, remained by our side, observantly waiting, as if she sensed the turmoil surrounding us. Amidst this chaos, my phone rang. It was the local animal control officer. "We've received a report about a wild cat colony near the river," he explained, his voice strained. "They've been causing issues for local farms. We need to know if you plan to keep the mother and her kittens. We can't allow more feral cats in this area." His words resonated heavily, revealing just how complicated our intentions had become. In that moment, I looked over at Mira. Her face was pale, and the weight of the decision we faced hung in the air. "We need to make a choice," she said quietly. "This isn't just about the kittens anymore. It's about Tess and her future too." The storm continued to escalate, mirroring the tension we felt inside. Each hour that passed seemed critical, revealing the intertwining fates of the animals and our growing bonds with them. It became clear that our journey was about more than rescue. It was about navigating the responsibilities that came with our choices. In the midst of uncertainty, the decision we faced weighed heavily on all of us. Should we take Tess and her kittens to safety, or would staying in our care ultimately do more harm? This question loomed large, especially as I observed Tess's weary face, which reflected both vulnerability and a trusting spirit that was beginning to fade. While the storm outside had subsided, a different kind of tension settled inside the house. I noticed Tess withdrawing, her eyes now casting a resigned glance our way, as if she were questioning our ability to help her little ones. Days passed, and despite my efforts to comfort them, doubts began to creep in. Were we truly acting in their best interests? Or were we prolonging their suffering by keeping them in an environment that might not suit them? Sophie was the first to voice her concerns. "Ethan," she said, her voice quivering with emotion, "are we doing this for ourselves instead of for them? Are we too attached to see the reality?" Her usual optimism was replaced with a sense of urgency, and I could see the tears welling in her eyes. It was a stark shift, showing just how much the situation was weighing on her. Mira, while less emotionally invested, was clearly grappling with her own feelings. Although she focused on the practical aspects of what needed to be done, I noticed moments when her gaze would drift, revealing the burden of her responsibility. The gravity of the predicament seemed heavy for everyone involved. As I sat near Tess and her kittens, guilt washed over me. I wondered if I could detach from my emotions long enough to make the best decision for them. Each look at Tess reminded me of the intensity of our struggle, the fight between wanting to save them and the realization that maybe letting them go was the right answer. One afternoon, while observing Tess quietly watching her kittens, I contemplated her trust in us. Here was a mother cat, bringing her young to us, believing we could help. It dawned on me that perhaps she understood something we did not. The notion of releasing them lingered in my mind, alongside the thought of the storm outside which could pose dangers far beyond what they faced within our walls. As the emotional strain began to take its toll on all of us, it became clear that there were no easy answers. We found ourselves caught between hope and the reality of the situation, with no perfect solution in sight. It was a typical evening when I suddenly heard a scratching sound near our door. At first, I dismissed it as just the wind, but the noise persisted, becoming louder and more urgent. Curiosity piqued, I stood up and opened the door, only to find two wild and thin cats with eyes glinting in the dim light. They hesitated, seemingly unsure about what to do next. I felt an immediate sense of unease. Were they drawn to Tess? Inside, the atmosphere had been tense for days as we navigated the challenges of caring for Tess and her kittens. Each passing moment pushed us closer to a decision we struggled to make. The weight of our dilemma felt heavy, and Tess's behavior had noticeably changed. She seemed distant, her demeanor a reflection of our own uncertainty. It was as if she sensed the emotional turmoil around her, creating an unsettling barrier between her and us. When Mira rushed to my side, alarm etched on her face, I pointed toward the cats outside. "They've been watching us. I have a feeling this isn't just a coincidence," I explained, my voice betraying my anxiety. Mira took a moment to assess the situation. "They're part of the colony," she responded quietly, her eyes narrowing as she processed the implications. "They've been keeping an eye on Tess, and now they seem drawn to us." A chill spread through me as I pondered the significance of their presence. Were they simply curious, or was there more beneath the surface? It felt as if we were standing on the edge of something we could not control. What if this was a sign of a situation spiraling out of our grasp? Just then, Sophie, who had been quietly observing from the corner, voiced a concern that echoed my own thoughts. "What if they're not here to help?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The question lingered in the air, a reminder of the delicate balance we faced between doing what was best for Tess and her kittens and confronting our own unease about the choices ahead. As the days passed, it became increasingly clear that our situation was delicate. Tess, who once roamed freely, had begun to withdraw, her earlier restlessness replaced by a palpable sense of urgency. It was as if she sensed an approaching change, but what did she truly know? Was her trust in us unshakable, or were we being led into an unknown territory that was beyond our reach? One afternoon, while I sat by the fire with Sophie, Mira went to check on the kittens. When she returned, her expression was filled with concern. "Ethan," she said, her voice shaking, "Dusty isn't responding. It's like he's given up." Her words settled heavily in my stomach. "What do you mean?" I asked, fearing the answer. "He's just lying there, barely moving. His breathing is weak. We could try to keep him warm, but I don't think he's going to pull through." It was evident that Dusty's fragile state marked a turning point. The reality of his condition hit me hard, and I felt a lump rise in my throat. Watching Dusty struggle was heart-wrenching, especially knowing that his resilience so starkly contrasted with that of his sibling Shadow, who sought Tess for warmth and support. Dusty lay aloof, confined to a corner, seemingly shut off from the world. The bond between Tess and her kittens was proving more complex than I had anticipated. Meanwhile, the presence of the wild cats loomed large in our minds. They were not just a part of the environment, they served as a reminder of the larger struggles at play, something that felt out of our control. Their bright eyes, glinting in the dim light of the stormy night, felt like watches from the shadows, silently waiting to see how our story would unfold. Mira had attempted to approach the wild cats, but they always slipped into the darkness, as if aware of our awareness. It was clear that their existence could no longer be overlooked. What would happen if they sought to take Tess and her kittens away from us? The uncertainty grew increasingly unsettling as I watched the mysterious felines lurking nearby. This situation felt like a tangled web, one that we were trying to navigate without a clear understanding of its depths. How much did we really know about Tess and the wild cats? In moments of doubt, the echoes of my concerns lingered, urging me to reflect on our circumstances. We had entered a chapter marked by uncertainty, and each moment with Dusty added to the weight of the worry that hung in the air. The atmosphere inside the house was thick with uncertainty. Outside, a storm raged, mirroring the turmoil we felt within. We were faced with difficult choices, but clarity seemed just out of reach. As each day unfolded, the emotional toll weighed heavier on us. Dusty's condition was worsening, and with every passing hour, we were reminded of the harsh reality that he was slipping away. Despite our best efforts to provide warmth and comfort, his tiny body grew colder, leaving us grappling with the impending loss. Tess's unwavering devotion stood in stark contrast to the overall sense of despair. She remained by Dusty's side, nudging him softly in hopes he might respond. Although her initial frantic energy had faded, it felt like she was coming to terms with the situation. Each time I witnessed her quiet acceptance, a wave of guilt washed over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was failing her, letting her down at a moment when she needed support the most. Meanwhile, Shadow, the other kitten, displayed a different demeanor. While Tess focused on Dusty, he sought comfort from us. I noted a subtle strain in his behavior. Tess often pushed him back, as if trying to protect him from an unknown threat. It made me wonder if she understood something we did not, perhaps a deeper awareness of the dangers that loomed for both of her kittens. The arrival of the feral cats outside added another layer of complexity to the situation. Why had they shown up at this moment? And why had Tess chosen to bring her fading kittens to us? These questions lingered in my mind and fueled my speculation. The more we tried to help, the more it seemed Tess was aware of something that eluded us, a piece of the puzzle that could reshape our understanding of this rescue experience. Tess's bond with her kittens grew even more intricate as time passed. Shadow's curiosity about the world around him increased, a stark contrast to the sadness enveloping Dusty. It was as if Tess instinctively knew she had to keep her little family close, even as the reality of their situation became harder to bear. In this turbulent moment, the lines of motherhood, instinct, and survival blurred, crafting a narrative that went beyond our intentions and expectations. The room was thick with tension as I held Dusty, his small body fragile in my hands. Around us, the weight of an important decision lingered. Looking over at Tess, the mother cat, I felt the pressure of the situation. Earlier, my thoughts were interrupted by a call from the animal control officer. His voice was steady and matter-of-fact, guiding me through a difficult reality. "Ethan, you need to decide. You can't keep them forever. They need to go back into the wild, or we'll have to take them." His words cut sharply, leaving me feeling cornered. What if I let them go? How could I turn Tess and her kittens back into an uncertain world? They had trusted us with their lives. The idea of surrendering them gnawed at me. I wanted so badly to save both. However, reality reminded me that was unlikely. Beside me, Sophie broke the silence. Her voice was gentle but filled with emotion. "Ethan, holding them here isn't a solution. It feels like failing, but maybe it's time to consider freeing them. It might be their best chance." Her perspective struck a chord, making me reflect on the balance between protection and allowing them the freedom they deserve. Mira, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up, her voice firm yet empathetic. "You know what needs to happen, Ethan. I understand this isn't easy, but we can't delay. Waiting will only complicate things further." Her statement resonated with me, amplifying the urgency. Every moment spent contemplating was a missed opportunity for all of us. The future, filled with uncertainty, loomed ahead like a fog. Eventually, I had to reconcile the gravity of my choice, a choice that felt like an immense burden. I surveyed the room, full of emotional complexity, knowing that however I decided, it would lead us into unknown territory. As I stood there, holding Dusty, the tiny kitten whose life was slipping away, a new idea began to take shape. What if the best choice wasn't just about what we could do for him and his mother, Tess, but what we could offer instead? Freedom, the chance to survive on their own. Mira's voice broke the heavy silence around us. "Ethan, we need a decision. Are we setting them free or taking them to a shelter?" Panic surged in my chest as I felt the weight of that question. "I don't know," I murmured, overwhelmed by the gravity of the moment. Sophie, standing beside Mira, added softly but with a firm tone, "This isn't just about us. Tess depends on us, and so does Dusty. His time is short, but Shadow deserves a chance at life." I glanced at Tess, who sat a few feet away, her intense gaze fixed on Dusty. A low, mournful meow escaped her, a quiet plea that pierced my heart. She gently nudged her kitten, but he didn't respond. In that moment, I saw her helplessness, trapped in a situation she couldn't control. I wanted to comfort her, to promise her everything would be all right, yet deep down, I was uncertain. Mira sighed, frustration evident in her demeanor. "Dragging this out isn't helping. If they're going to survive, it has to be out there, in the wild." Her words resonated with me, though I wasn't ready to say goodbye, especially after all we had done to save them. Yet she had a point. Tess and her kittens were wild animals, not suited for domestic life, no matter how much we wanted to protect them. I remembered the unsettling phone call I had received earlier from animal control, where the officer had stated, "Release them or surrender them." It felt like a heavy burden resting on my shoulders, making me question whether I could let them go without betraying Tess's trust. Mira and Sophie watched me closely, their eyes filled with a mix of concern and expectation. Tess continued to observe Dusty, a silent testament to her love and worry. As the gravity of the situation hung in the air, I realized that perhaps the most compassionate choice was to give them the freedom to live as they were meant to, wild and free. With a heavy heart, I turned away from the door after Tess and Shadow had disappeared into the night. This feeling was profound, like a thick fog settling around me, making it hard to see ahead. I couldn't help but wonder about the choice we had just made. Did I truly do the right thing in letting them go? Dusty might have lacked the strength for the journey ahead, but Tess and Shadow, they were meant to return to their rightful place. Sophie and Mira stood silently beside me, the tension palpable. Finally, I whispered the decision we all had to face. We released them. It was a conclusion that felt like a weighty necessity rather than a choice born of desire. Tess offered a soft final meow as I opened the door, and in that moment, loss and relief mingled within me. Watching them vanish into the darkness, I realized that letting go can sometimes lead to the greatest peace, but the finality of this decision still sat heavily on my heart. As I reflected on our actions, an uneasy feeling surfaced. Shadow, being the stronger of the two kittens, would now face the wild alone. And Tess, did she truly understand what we were asking of her? Doubts crept in. Would they find their way in a world we could never completely shield them from? Would they survive without our help? The silence inside the house felt larger than before, echoing the emptiness left by their absence. Sophie had been my anchor through this ordeal, but now her sadness mirrored my own. "Do you think they'll be okay?" She finally broke the silence, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know," I admitted, peering into the dark void where they once played. "I hope so. I really do." The truth was, I didn't have the answers. The futures of Tess, Shadow, and even Dusty seemed uncertain, like a wish that might never be fulfilled. We had done everything we could for them, welcomed them into our lives, and given them the care they needed. Yet it was clear that the unpredictable nature of the world lay beyond our control. Just then, Mira stepped forward and placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, grounding me in this moment of shared sorrow and hope. As I stood still, the night enveloped me in silence, punctuated only by an unexpected sound, a faint meow. My heart quickened. Could it be Tess? I held my breath, listening intently, hoping against hope. Then I heard it again, unmistakable, cutting through the stillness like a beacon. I took off toward the sound, with Sophie and Mira right behind me. The moon filtered through the trees, illuminating our path. Just ahead, I spotted her. Tess was at the edge of the woods, her eyes wide with panic and confusion. She was alone, with neither Shadow nor Dusty by her side. Her gaze met mine, filled with urgency as she trembled slightly. Why had she returned? What had driven her back? Had she come looking for help, or could it be that she simply couldn't let go of the bond we had formed? My heart raced as questions swirled in my mind. As I approached her, I knelt down to her level, meeting her worried eyes. In that moment, she didn't move away. It was as if she was waiting for me, anticipating my next action. Reflecting on everything that had led us to this point, I remembered the conversation with Ethan earlier. "You made the right choice," she had reassured me. "You gave them a chance." Her words had offered some comfort, but they hadn't quite filled the emptiness I felt. I wondered about Tess and Shadow often. Were they thriving in whatever new environment they had found, or had their journey taken an unexpected turn? It was anyone's guess. Time had passed since that decision, and while I hoped we had acted correctly, the uncertainty weighed heavily on me. This experience had transformed us. We had learned about sacrifice and the unpredictability of rescuing animals. Some paths conclude clearly, while others leave lingering questions, just like ours. Although I had chosen to let them go, the pain of that choice resonated deep within me, echoing the stillness of the night around me. Had I truly done what was best for them, or had my fears influenced my decision? Then, faced with Tess's return, those doubts resurfaced, intensifying the emotional turmoil within me. What lay ahead now, I could only begin to imagine. The moment felt heavy with uncertainty when Sophie spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan, what do we do now? She's back." I was taken aback, feeling an overwhelming mix of emotions. I had let Tess and Shadow leave, thinking it was the right choice. But now Tess stood before us again, looking for help. This moment carried a weight I hadn't anticipated, as it wasn't just about her and her kittens, it would impact our lives too. With a deep breath, I rose to my feet, aware of the decision looming ahead. Looking into Tess's eyes, something clicked within me. I reached out my hand, and without hesitation, she nuzzled gently against it, as if silently pleading for our support. At that moment, it ceased to be a matter of whether we could save them. It became clear that our connection mattered. Tess had returned to us, and we simply couldn't turn her away. I carefully cradled Tess in my arms and made my way back to the house. Shadow would find his own path in time, but Tess had come back to us, and I recognized the significance of that choice. We felt determined to do whatever it took to help her and her kittens, no matter what lay ahead. As days passed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Bringing Tess into our home hadn't been an easy decision, but it felt right. We had done everything we could for her and her kittens, and now she was once again seeking our care. The frantic mother I had first encountered weeks earlier seemed to have transformed. She appeared calm yet alert, a testament to her evolving trust. I often thought of Shadow as he roamed the wild. I hoped he was managing well, thriving as he was meant to. Dusty's absence, however, still weighed heavily on my heart. The memory of that fragile little kitten who had slipped away despite our best efforts was a bittersweet reminder of our limitations, no matter the intensity of our actions. Yet Tess's return felt like a healing balm. We were all navigating this new territory together. In giving her a second chance, we found a path to healing for ourselves as well. This experience revealed that rescue isn't just about saving lives. It's also about creating opportunities for something meaningful, even amid uncertainty. Reflecting on the journey, I realized it was far from perfect. Questions often outweighed answers, and doubt frequently clouded our clarity. But that was part of the process, shaping each of us in profound ways. Rescue is often about the journey rather than just reaching a perfect outcome. It's in the connections we make and the choices we face that the true value emerges. Take Tess and Shadow, for example. Their futures are uncertain. They could find a new home or perhaps return to the wild, embracing their independence. What matters is that our lives intersected, creating a shared experience that held significance for all of us. One important lesson I've discovered is that the best choice doesn't always assure the best results. Often it's about selecting what feels right in the moment, even when there's ambiguity ahead. Watching Tess settle comfortably by the fire, I realized that her story may not lead to a neat conclusion. The future is shrouded in uncertainty, but this unpredictability is a fundamental aspect of the rescue process. It continues with hope, questions, and the beautiful chaos of life. When I reflect on Tess's trust and the unexpected challenges we've encountered, it's clear that rescue is more than merely saving lives. It's about navigating hard choices and recognizing that some results lie beyond our control. While the paths Tess and Shadow might take remain a mystery, we've put forth our best efforts, and the lessons we've gained will remain with us. If you found this narrative compelling and wish to explore more stories, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe. Let's continue this journey together, as your support helps us highlight these meaningful moments of connection. Thank you for being part of this experience, and I look forward to our next encounter.